The two groups did about the same on the test before they were praised, but after the praise was lavished, they began to look like two very different groups of kids. The half who received praise for their smarts adopted a fixed mindset. When given a choice between tasks, they rejected the more challenging option in favor of the one they could more easily master, thereby keeping their smart or talented label intact. Children look to their teachers and parents to help them understand their place in the world. And if we lavish praise for inherent qualities in an attempt to bolster their self-esteem, we do them a huge disservice. Not only are we instilling a fixed mindset, we are planting the seeds of distrust. When a teacher moves around the room praising each kid, "Great job, you are so smart," the students figure out pretty quickly that someone is being lied to. They know they can't all be geniuses, and they begin to doubt our honesty, or at the very least our judgment. Stanford University education professor William Damon describes the damage praise can wreak on children and their trust in our opinion of them. Even when spawned by the best of intentions, less than honest communications to children inevitably create unfortunate complications. One such complication is that sooner or later, children see through all inaccurate statements about themselves. This sentiment was echoed by Lisa Heffernan, writer of the parenting blog Grown and Flown and mother of 2. The single most important thing we have with our kids, beyond our enduring love, is our credibility. By telling kids that they are good at something when they are patently not, we ruin that credibility and do little for their self-esteem, as the truth at some point will be revealed. When my kids do not have an aptitude for something, I don't shy away from telling them. But this means that any praise I do give them has that much more value. Our trustworthiness as parents should not be sacrificed on the flimsy altar of acclaim. Kids who have been taught to pray to that altar and have been overpraised for their smarts and talent are easy to spot in the classroom. They do the bare minimum required to get by. They never take up the gauntlet of challenging extra work and are reluctant to risk saying anything that might be wrong. These students are frustrating to teach because they won't stretch themselves or take any intellectual leaps of faith for fear of not living up to their parents' expectations and whatever label has been bestowed on them. The truth I try to impart to every single one of my students is this: it all gets hard eventually, even the stuff you have a talent for. Imagine when a kid who has been told that he has a talent for math first sees a complex algebra formula in class and can't understand it. He thinks, "My parents tell me I am smart, but I can't be, not if I can't understand this right away and I can't let them find out the truth." This is a terrible bind to put kids in, and it drives them underground. They feel terrible about themselves as they suffer through a crisis of confidence and identity, and reject help at the cost of the image they are desperate to keep intact for the sake of their parents' affection and approval. The most striking part of Dweck's work on praise and mindsets lies in what comes after these growth or fixed mindsets take hold and begin to shape children's identities. After Dweck praised students either for effort or smarts on a fairly easy test, they were then given a much harder test designed specifically to elicit some failure and frustration. The kids who had been praised for their smarts tended to give up, whereas the kids who had been praised for their effort tried harder. The students did not give up because they did not take the failure personally. They did not think that their inability to correctly answer the problems right away meant they were not smart. And here's my favorite part, the detail that warms the cockles of my teaching heart. The kids who accepted the challenge problems said the hard problems were more fun. While the kids with the growth mindsets were having fun, the fixed mindset kids tanked. Even when Dweck backed off on the level of difficulty and gave the subjects more of the easy problems, the fixed mindset kids did poorly. They could not bounce back from defeat and did even worse on the easy problems than they had in the first round. In a final, sinister yet illuminating twist, Dweck asked the subjects to write down their thoughts about the problems for future students, and while they were at it, write down their scores. 40% of the kids who were praised for smarts lied about their scores. As Dweck wrote in her book Mindset, we took ordinary children and made them into liars, simply by telling them they were smart. In order to understand how praising kids the wrong way can turn them into liars, I turned to Professor James M. Lang, author of Cheating Lessons, Learning from Academic Dishonesty. He writes that we good job kids into a state of overconfidence and an overinflated sense of their skill level, which can lead to all sorts of negative consequences, such as a tendency to understudy. The ability to judge one's own level of knowledge, skill, or thought process is called metacognition, and it's what allows kids to gauge whether or not they are prepared or knowledgeable on a topic. Students with good metacognitive skills are more likely to achieve what Lang calls self-efficacy, or a belief in their ability to succeed. Not confidence in their ability to succeed, not magical thinking based on parents' effusive praise, but a belief based on experience and repeated effort in a skill or task. Yet, we continue to believe that if we tell our children how wonderful and talented they are by throwing empty platitudes, trophies, and blue ribbons at them, we will bolster performance along with self-esteem. We plaster our car bumpers with stickers advertising, "My kid's an honor student at Springfield Middle School." Every time your kid glances at that bumper, he is reminded that the thing you value in him is not how hard he works or how long he sticks with a challenge, but his grades and standardized test results. Recent studies have shown that the very kids we hope to help the most with all this praise, kids with low self-esteem, are actually the worst off for our efforts and suffer even lower self-esteem than if we just left them alone. Imagine what those kids with low self-esteem could do if their parents and teachers started praising them for their hard work and diligence, hard work that pays off in increased autonomy, competence, and connection. That's the kind of esteem I'd like my students to have, the sort of self-image that's been earned, hard-won, and deserved. It's a real challenge to switch from a fixed to a growth mindset, and even harder to change the language that flies out of our mouths when our kids do something well or come up short. Don't worry if it takes a while to get the language right. We have become accustomed to the praise and encouragement we heap on kids for innate and effortless accomplishment. Even Carol Dweck admits to slipping up once in a while, praising her family for brilliance rather than efforts. But the point is to create new habits that have the potential to communicate a sense of self-efficacy and an accurate representation of our children's abilities. Here are some ideas that can help reorient the way you praise your child and may just help him adopt a growth mindset and a strong sense of self-efficacy. Praise for effort, not inherent qualities. Instead of, "Great job on that test, you are so smart," try, "Great job on that test. What did you do this time in preparation that worked so well?" Instead of, "I love that drawing, you have real talent in art," try, "I'm proud of you for working so hard on the shading and perspective." Kids who believe that intelligence grows with effort and diligence will be less distraught about failures, more likely to stick with tasks through those failures, and may even have more fun as they do so. Adopt a growth mindset in your own life, even when it makes you uncomfortable. When your kids see you stretch yourself, even if you fail in the process, they will be more likely to stretch themselves. Better yet, let them see you continue to stretch yourself after you fail, so they will understand that failing at a task does not mean that the person is a failure. You are your child's first and greatest role model, so show him that you are dedicated to the idea that success is tied to effort, not innate talent. Find the thing you believe you cannot do and give it a shot. Failure and rejection are a part of the learning process, particularly when we butt up against our comfort zones. But it's amazing what can happen once we break through that zone and glimpse the possibilities beyond. Don't reinforce maladaptive reactions to failure. We all react differently to failure, but some of these reactions are healthier than others and have the potential to teach us more. Denial, for example, tends to exacerbate and prolong failure. Be honest with your children. If your child has failed at something because she did not work hard enough, say so. Teach your child to see the realities of her shortcomings and failures and react accordingly. When we tell children how talented and gifted they are at a particular skill when all evidence points to the contrary, they know, and their faith in us is subsequently weakened. Make sure your child knows his failures do not lessen your love or opinion of him. Your love and emotional connection buffer and soften the pain and embarrassment children may feel from failure. Further, knowing that you will be there to support, rather than to judge or offer false praise, offers kids a secure and safe haven from the anxiety they experience in their lives. Let your children feel disappointed by failure. Sit with the emotions and don't try to jump in and resolve the situation. After all, these are his failures, not yours, and it is unfair and counterproductive to try to make it all better for him. What you are teaching him through your patient silence and inaction on his behalf is that he has the inner strength to move on from failure. Do not offer to rescue your child from the consequences of his mistakes. Your offer to rescue implies that you don't believe he has the ability to find a solution himself. Help him problem solve and find lessons in the failure rather than viewing it as a devastating blow to his self-image and confidence. Your goal should be to help him regain a sense of control over the experience of failing. The real learning happens when kids begin to understand how to pick through the wreckage, find the pieces that still work for them, and devise a strategy for future success. Olivia eventually healed from her injuries, and despite having lost most of her knowledge base, she was able to return to high school, graduate with her classmates, and go to college. I can't be certain that the changes Elena made in her parenting had anything to do with Olivia's success, and a sample size of 1 is hardly statistically significant. I do know that when Elena began supporting Olivia's efforts rather than her intelligence, she increased the likelihood that Olivia would survive the many failures she encountered as she worked to regain a sense of normalcy. Better still, she gave Olivia a great lesson in how to be the sort of parent who will one day inspire a growth mindset in her own children. Part 2. Learning from failure. Teaching kids to turn mistakes into success. Chapter 5. Household duties. Laundry as an opportunity for competence. One afternoon, I walked into my English classroom and overheard an 8th grader complaining to her friends about how hungry she was. I asked her if she'd forgotten her lunch, and she replied, "No, but I hate what my mom packs for me." Rather than point out the obvious solution, that she should plan and pack her own food, I asked if she could think of any way to solve her unsatisfactory lunch situation. "I could buy lunch," she offered, ending her sentence in an implied question mark, and looked for my reaction. "Or," I prompted. "Or I could tell my mom what I like so she can pack stuff I want to eat," she said more confidently, pleased that she had come up with such a brilliant plan. "Or," I repeated. She was puzzled. What other option could there be? I turned to her classmate, who packed her own lunches. "Elsie, what else could Kate do to make sure she gets exactly the kind of lunch she wants, one that she can't possibly complain about?" Elsie turned pink. "You could pack your own lunch. That's what I do. Sometimes I even pack lunch right after we eat dinner because all the food is already out, and then I don't have to do it in the morning when I'm in a rush." It was Kate's turn to blush. "Oh, yeah, I could do that." And do that she did. In the first week or 2, she even made a point to mention how much she was enjoying her lunch whenever I was in earshot. About a month later, on her birthday, she turned up in the door of my office bearing a large tray of cupcakes. "It's my birthday. Would you like a cupcake?" I made them myself. She was beaming, absolutely thrilled with this opportunity to make sure I knew how far she'd come in her culinary skills. I took one and watched her hand out the rest to her classmates, mentioning every 30 seconds or so that she'd made them herself. Even the frosting, she proclaimed. Children want to feel capable, and we used to let them before we took the onus of household duties away from them. Instead of teaching our children how to be responsible, reliable members of a family in which children contribute, we do everything for them. Worse, we don't expect competence from them, and when they do give household duties a shot, we swoop in and we fix. We swoop in after our kids make their beds and smooth out the lumps and bumps. We swoop in after they fold the laundry and straighten the misfolded towels. I've actually taken the sponge out of my son's hands because he was making more of a mess of the milk he was supposed to be cleaning up. I have sent him out of the room and told him to just go play when he was not doing something as quickly or as precisely as I would have. I understand the impulse to want things done better or faster or straighter, but to what end? So much more than speed and perfection are sacrificed when we swoop in and fix. What's more important, that the dishes are immaculate or that your child develops a sense of purpose and pride because he's finally contributing in a real and valuable way to the family? That the bed is made without wrinkles or that your child learns to make household tasks a part of his daily routine? All of this swooping and fixing make for emotionally, intellectually, and socially handicapped children, unsure of their direction or purpose without an adult on hand to guide them. It's important that my student plans and prepares her own lunch, not because she's spoiled or because I want her to toughen up, but because the failures she will experience when she screws up making that lunch are important. She needs to be disappointed in her own choices once in a while. She needs to find out that when she packs the yogurt under the ice pack rather than on top, it gets squished and the entire lunch bag becomes a sticky vanilla mess. She needs to know what it feels like to clean that sticky lunch bag and avoid the same mistake next time. She needs to discover all the small details, workarounds, and solutions we devise in order to avoid the million small disasters that plague ordinary, everyday obligations. A friend told me recently, after she'd had a car accident that left her unscathed but chastened, that in the middle of the crash, she'd realized she needed to make lists of all the small details her family would need to know if she was not there to take care of them. Her son needed to know that his soccer clothes had to go into the laundry on Sunday so he'd have what he needed for Monday's practice. Her daughter needed to know which fabrics can go in the dryer and which cannot, and what happens when wool sweaters sneak into the dryer by mistake. The kids should know how to fix the toilet when it clogs, and reset the water pressure tank after a power outage, and change a fuse, and winterize the lawnmower, and the million other things she'd taken care of herself rather than burden her kids with. I pointed out that if she were to die in a car accident, the location of the reset lever on the water tank would be the least of her family's worries, but I understood her point. When we don't allow our children to participate in the business of running a household, they are quite helpless without us, and she'd gotten a glimpse of just how paralyzed and incompetent they'd be in her absence. This was a wake-up call for her in large and small ways. Protecting our kids from failure, from experiencing small disasters and learning how to cope with them, isn't doing them any favors, and not just in my friend's near-death glimpse. Whether we overparent and protect out of a need for perfectionism, a desire to show affection, or a need to prove our own parenting excellence, we deny our children the opportunity to be full members of the family with their own duties and responsibilities. We withhold the gift of failure, forgetting that some of our best parenting moments happen in the midst of disaster. My friend and New York Times editor KJ Dell'Antonia loves to tell the story of the day a friend's car veered off her icy driveway into a snowdrift. The adults were stressed out and angered by the accident, but the 6 or 7 kids on hand were thrilled and excited by the opportunity to pitch in and help get the car back on the road. They rallied together, fetching cat litter for traction and shovels, and devised all sorts of ramps and levers and pulley configurations in order to maneuver the car back onto the driveway. KJ still marvels at the optimism and enthusiasm that the kids brought to an otherwise frustrating situation. It was as if they were waiting for a crisis, an opportunity to prove just how ingenious and helpful they could be. They tried and failed at their many schemes to free the car, but they reveled in each new inspiration. KJ speaks of that afternoon as one of her favorite memories of the winter. And when I asked her son about the afternoon, he immediately broke into a smile as he launched into a retelling of the day's adventures. When we exclude our kids from household disasters, we lose an easy opportunity to recover from those failures. Household tasks can be daunting at first. We encourage them to be freeloaders and stick with the things they're good at: watching, being waited on, and making that face of perplexed impatience, hoping an adult will pass by and rescue them from their inability to solve problems. We teach our kids that they only need to worry about themselves and risk pushing them over the line between ineffectual and incompetent, right into lazy and narcissistic. Ineffectual and incompetent can be remedied with some patience, but the re-education of a narcissist is a much bigger challenge. In talking with teachers about what children are capable of doing around the house, it has become clear to me that teachers have much more faith in children's abilities than parents do. When I ask teachers for lists of skills that kids can do on their own, skills that parents don't believe they can handle, I received pages and pages of suggestions. One teacher, when faced with the question of what her kindergarten students could do if given enough time and patience, smiled and said, "Everything." I have written my fair share of secondary school and college recommendation letters, and I can't begin to recount the number of times I've reviewed carefully cultivated and well-planned transcripts, complete with extensive accounts of the students' commitment to service, time spent serving up dinners in homeless shelters, sorting donated clothing, building latrines in Costa Rica. Yet I know for a fact that the child in question has never done her own laundry. We currently spend huge amounts of energy and money on service trips and charity work and obsess about how these efforts will look on a college application. But a child's education and service to others should begin at home, for her own family, and sooner rather than later. Just because your child has never done the laundry or loaded the dishwasher does not mean she is not capable of doing just that. Kids are creative and resourceful, and even tasks that seem unmanageable due to limits of heights or dexterity can be accomplished with the aid of a step stool and simple directions. Those dishes that belong in the high cabinets above the counter? It took a half hour, but when my younger son was first assigned dishwasher duty at 6 or 7, he dragged a chair from the living room to reach the shelves. One by one, he put those plates away where they belonged. When I had asked him to unload the dishwasher, I'd forgotten about the high shelves, but he'd figured out a way around that obstacle himself. The look of pride he gave me when I said, "Wait, you did all of it, even those plates?" was utterly gratifying. Failure has been a part of that process, of course. Since that first day, he has broken dishes in the process of learning how best to carry, stack, and load them. But who cares? I'd trade 10 broken plates for his smiles of competence and pride. Children have been deprived of a sense of contribution and purpose for a couple of generations now, and it's time to give it back. Household participation is a first, and I'd argue essential step toward building a purpose-driven and fulfilling life. When physicians examine causes of depression and suicidal ideation in adolescents, lack of purpose is mentioned over and over in the academic literature as a main factor. Purpose is what saves us all from despair when the details of life become overwhelming or boring, and it is what fuels the determination, resourcefulness, and resolve that will see our children through to their goals. There are a lot of reasons parents give for not granting their children the space and opportunity to find purpose. Among them, "It's faster if I do it myself." They will just do it wrong anyway. Kids should be kids while they can. They will work it out when they grow up. My house will look disgusting and people will judge me. My kids will look disgusting and people will judge me. Enough. It's time to grant our kids the opportunity to contribute. Allow them the chance to step up, try, fail, and try again until they get it right. First, we must expunge the word chores from our household vocabulary. Amy McCready, parenting coach and founder of Positive Parenting Solutions, told me, "I've always encouraged parents to ditch the word chores and replace it with family contributions. Calling them family contributions doesn't make kids enjoy them anymore, but it sends an important message about significance, that when you help out, you make a big difference for this family. We all have a hardwired need for significance, and this is a great way to foster that in all kids, from toddlers to teens." As your child discovers her significance and purpose, it's important to keep in mind that she's going to fail. She's going to make a mess of things from time to time as she learns. Her contribution to the household is not simply an item on a checklist you post on the refrigerator, but a process, an education. You know how to fold laundry just the way you like it folded. Your daughter does not. Let her muck it up the first couple of times. Give her the opportunity to notice that her folded shirts look different than the other ones in her drawer. Let her brother get frustrated with her because his pants are inside out and damp because the dryer twisted the leg in a knot. Let her discover for herself that when she leaves the clothes in the dryer overnight, her favorite shirt becomes hopelessly wrinkled, and maybe next time she won't let that happen. Your house might be a little less perfect than usual as she learns how to become useful, and your kids may have to go out in public wearing those damp pants and wrinkled shirts. But if you care about the judgment of teachers, friends, and neighbors more than you do about your child's sense of competence, that's something you should think about. Eventually, she'll become competent in the details of doing the laundry, not just to completion, but well. Given enough time and lots of opportunities, she may even figure out how to fold a fitted sheet. As our children's first teachers, parents are in the best possible position to teach kids how to focus on goals and face everyday responsibilities and challenges with courage and a good attitude. If we are easily defeated, they will learn to become easily defeated. Children who view obstacles as overwhelming and insurmountable give up on their goals. Kids who have witnessed their parents' resolve and resourcefulness and been allowed to develop great problem-solving skills don't give up. They get down to the business of using pulleys, levers, and all the other tools at their disposal to move obstacles out of their way and finish the job. Here's how the magic happens. Great expectations and genuine accountability. Set clear expectations and hold your kids accountable when they don't meet those expectations. No bribes or rewards of cash payment. Remember, those kinds of short-term incentives can be used to kickstart motivation, but don't work as long-term strategy. Besides, the message should not be that one contributes to a family in exchange for money, but that one contributes because one is an integral part of a cooperative unit, a group of people who depend on each other, both for labor and love. Explain to your children from an early age that you expect them to contribute to the running of the household. If they are older and have never been asked to contribute before, be honest. Cop to the fact that you failed yourself and have been underestimating their abilities all along. Brainstorm as a family about jobs the kids are capable of learning and come up with a list of expectations. You can post or not post this list, that's up to you, but the expectations have to be clear and age-appropriate. One mom I know draws pictures of dishes or a washing machine or a lunchbox for her little kids who can't yet read, while the lists are written out for her older children. Step away and hold your tongue. Once you've outlined your expectations for your children, explain that you will not be nagging them until they complete their responsibilities. If your daughter's job is to clean up her place after meals and rinse the dishes before putting them in the dishwasher, and she forgets, leave the dishes out. This is where the teachable moments happen. Explain to her that the once easily rinsable food dries over time, and it will be much harder to clean it off when she finally gets around to it. But the dishes will remain on the table, waiting for her to clean them up. This is going to require a lot of restraint on your part. Nagging and pestering is the fastest way to destroy motivation as well as destroy your connection and relationship with your child. Even if that dish sits on the table for 2 days, don't nag or hover, and absolutely no swooping in or fixing, but be present and help problem solve. Parenting coach and author Vicki Hoflick calls this method duct tape parenting because, yes, sometimes keeping our mouths shut and holding ourselves back from interfering in these learning moments requires something as strong as duct tape. Keep the concept of autonomy supportive parenting in mind and offer support, not control. Be there to help if he is not sure about a cycle setting on the washer or if something goes horribly awry with the fabric softener, but find something absorbing to do while he goes about the work. No butting in, no prompting, and no correcting unless asked. Oh, and one last thing. If you go behind your child's back and redo the chore he has just finished to his satisfaction, even if it's after he's left the room, he'll notice. You will be telling him through your actions that not only is he incompetent, but that you will finish the job if he's careless. That is one lesson you don't want him to learn, both for his sake and for yours. Praise your children for the effort they put into the chores, particularly if they really had to problem solve or had to stick with a task that was not going well. When I praised my son for putting those plates away in the high cupboards, I was not praising him for taking on the task, because he knew I expected that of him. Rather, I was praising him for the extra effort, determination, and perseverance he showed when he hit a roadblock. Ditch the lollipops. If your child has become addicted to the rewards you have been offering for helping out, you have a little extra work ahead of you to reorient her thinking. Questions of, what do I get if I do that? And how much will you pay me? Must give way to a new motivation, and the transition can take time and patience. First, stop using rewards as your default strategy. If you must reward for household duties, try to put off the reward for as long as possible in order to disengage the reward from the actual task, or make the reward non-material. Keep in mind that little kids can only wait for a short period of time, but older kids can wait for much longer. The goal is to remove the task from the reward and shift their focus back toward internal motivators. As you move away from material rewards, talk about how rewarding it is to do a job well. Explain why you are not offering material rewards and why household participation is so important. Reward with praise the effort and patience your child had to exhibit in order to complete the task, even if it took many tries, especially if it took many tries. Once you have reoriented your own thinking about your children's role in the household duties and have shelved the rewards, here are some suggestions for what and how you can put your grand plans into action. Household duties for the preschool set. The key to successfully instilling a sense of responsibility and pride, and helping children understand that they have a role to play in the family dynamic, is to start young. Even toddlers with their diminutive hands and limited attention spans can begin to explore their ability and competence in shared household responsibilities. When dealing with younger children, be sure to make your expectations clear and age-appropriate. Katie Hurley, child and adolescent psychotherapist and mother of 2, gave me her perspective on how she empowers her young children with their household contributions. My kids are still little, and certainly responsibilities change and attitudes toward those responsibilities change over time. I think what I've done well with mine is instead of creating some nagging revolving wheel of chores, I established age-appropriate expectations and I adjust those as they grow. Telling Riley she can use the special wood cleaner and clean all of the wood furniture in the house empowered her to feel more responsible. Giving Liam the power of the Swiffer dry mop gave him a bump in his confidence. We have family cleaning days where we all pitch in and then do something fun after, but I try to keep it mellow and don't place undue stress on it. Our mentality here is that we all live here and we all help each other out. They might not make their beds the way I would, but the beds are made and they have pride of ownership. Win-win. I see a lot of very controlling parents in my practice. Everything has to be perfect or punishments are the result. That's a mistake and only ends up creating resentment and anxiety. Communicate family participation as a privilege or even a game, and toddlers can accomplish more than you might expect. Here are some examples of the kinds of tasks toddlers are capable of learning. Put their dirty clothes in a basket or hamper. Dress themselves with clothing that's not too complicated. Fold simple items of clothing or linens such as pillowcases or washcloths. Put their clothes away in drawers. Follow 2 or 3-step directions in order to complete tasks. Get your toothbrush, put toothpaste on it, brush your teeth. Throw trash and recycling away in the proper place. Put toys away in tubs and baskets when they are done playing with them. Get out and put away their dishes as long as you arrange their cups and bowls on a low shelf. Feed the dog or cat. As children graduate from toddlerhood and move toward preschool, start teaching them how to manage more complicated duties. Kids between 3 and 5 are big fans of counting and sorting, so give them jobs around the house that encourage them to practice these skills while instilling responsibility. Ask them to put 5 books on that shelf, or ask them to count out 5 oranges and place them in a bag at the store. Kids this age are perfectly able to make their bed, straighten their room, sort and categorize items such as utensils in a drawer or socks in the laundry, water plants, clear their place at the table. Learn to not freak out and cry about spills, but get a towel or sponge and clean them up by themselves. Prepare their own snacks. Children as young as 5 can understand and accept the consequences of their actions and inaction, but only if they experience those consequences. Left her bagel on the coffee table and the dog ate it? Don't make her a new one and she will remember not to leave it within reach of the dog's mouth next time. Forgot to put her favorite DVD away in its case after she watched it? The next time she wants to watch that movie, don't help her look for it in the pile of loose DVDs and remind her why she can't find it. Refuses to put her clothes in the hamper? She won't have her favorite pink sweatshirt to wear to preschool. Left her favorite stuffed animal at school? She won't have that particular nighttime friend to cuddle with when the lights go out. These responsibilities and the lessons they carry are not really about DVDs or stuffed animals. They're about learning how to be responsible, to show initiative, and to follow through. They are about learning how to be the sort of person who will be able to manage the demands life will place on them. If you constantly bail your child out, she learns a lot from that, too. She learns that self-sufficiency is not really necessary because you'll always pick up the pieces, and that there's no real need to come up with any sort of system or plan for remembering her responsibilities in the future. The habits of highly effective school-age kids. Once kids have entered kindergarten, they are able to conquer tasks of much greater complexity and begin to develop solid habits for completing household duties. It can be a real challenge to establish habits during the unpredictable toddler and preschool years, but once kids are in kindergarten, it's time to nail down some routines. Make your child's jobs a daily event rather than an intermittent expectation. Habits are powerful motivators, and tasks can't become habitual unless they are regular and expected and, well, habitual. As habits require 3 elements, a cue, a routine, and a reward. In order to turn the occasional moment of helping out into a habit, it must be regular enough to become ingrained as a pattern. Let's take loading the dishwasher as an example. Your child's cue to clean up after herself is the dirty dish in front of her at the end of a meal. The routine is the cleaning of that dish, and the reward is the sense of accomplishment and competence that comes from having completed her task. Again, this does not mean a material reward such as money or the promise of a toy or treat. The enduring reward is the sense of a job well done. Here's the best thing about habits. Once they are formed and your child completes her work as a matter of course, rather than as a result of nagging, your household becomes a much more peaceful and harmonious place. As I mentioned earlier, there are some exceptions to the no rewards rule. Rewards can be a fun and effective way to jumpstart motivation when it begins to flag. My favorite example comes from the book All of a Kind Family by Sidney Taylor. The book tells the story of an Orthodox Jewish family living on the Lower East Side of Manhattan in the early 1900s. The girls are responsible for household duties on a rotating basis, and when the 5 daughters tire of the hated task of dusting the living room, their mother hides pennies in hard-to-find locations that would only be revealed through a thorough job of dusting. Once enthusiasm has been restored for the task, and grumbling has been replaced with requests to be assigned to the task, she uses the game intermittently, just often enough to spark renewed motivation, but not frequently enough for it to become an expected reward. Once, in my own little twist on this lesson, I tucked a beloved missing toy into a pile of stuff I wanted my son to put away, and suggested that if he cleaned his room up, he might just find what he'd been looking for. My first impulse had been to shout to the heavens that Supermommy had found the toy and bask in the glow of my triumph. But that strategy would not have resulted in a cleaner room or the happiness and discovery he experienced when he came across the toy himself. Between the ages of 6 and 11, children should grow more and more capable. They understand the concept of cause and effect and can predict that if the clothes don't go into the laundry basket, they won't get clean. If the dog does not get fed, she will be hungry. Capitalize on this understanding and help children see how being proactive around the house can lead to positive effects. At this point, kids are able to be responsible for all sorts of household tasks, such as peeling and chopping vegetables. Teach knife safety early and always use a sharp knife, which is safer than a dull one. Laundry. All of it, from sorting to putting it away. Post a list on the washing machine and dryer after you've conducted the requisite one-on-one lessons in order to provide reminders for all the steps. One mom pointed out that dry erase markers write and erase well on the side of washers and dryers, so she simply writes instructions on the appliance itself. Replacing the toilet paper when it's gone. Leave the direction the roll spins to your child's discretion. Setting and clearing the table. Outdoor work such as raking leaves, weeding, and hauling wood. Vacuuming and mopping floors. Helping to plan and prepare grocery lists and meals. With adolescence comes greater responsibility. From 12 on up, I can't think of many household duties beyond their abilities. The more competent teens I talk to for this book are responsible for household repairs, such as painting, replacing light bulbs, and simple car maintenance. Grocery shopping. Given some teens' quirky dietary habits, some parents provide pretty specific lists. Planning and preparing more complicated meals. Caring for and teaching younger siblings about their role in the household responsibilities. Taking the dog to the vet for his shots. Cleaning out the refrigerator. Chopping kindling and firewood. Clearing leaves out of the gutters. When I asked adolescent psychologist Jennifer Hartstein about the role household duties play in a teen's life, she noted that when responsibilities are understood to be a basic and foundational part of family life, they provide positive and effective opportunities for teens to gain the competence they are going to need as they move into adulthood. Encouraging your teen to be a competent and involved member of the household sets the stage for them to be successful in life. If an adolescent knows that he or she doesn't have to work for things, this often translates into an inability to work in the real world. Having to be responsible for things at home, i.e., chores, laundry, walking the dog, etc., helps to teach teens what it means to take care of the important things in their lives. Ultimately, this will cause the teen to have better self-esteem, feel more effective, be more productive, and be more motivated to continue this into their adult lives. It's never too early or too late to teach children how to contribute and problem solve under their own power. Despite all the protests to the contrary, kids want to play a useful role in their family's success. As parents have slowly, but systematically, deprived them of that role, we owe them the patience and time it takes to give that purpose and responsibility back. Sure, this restoration of order will be a challenge, but it will also be worth it both in the short and long term. The contribution of your children to the daily work of keeping a house and running a family will not only be a boon to the family now, but your kids' increased competence and sense of responsibility will set them apart from their more coddled peers when they head off to college or land their first job. While their peers stand around helplessly waiting to be told what to do and how to do it, your kids will know how to take charge and forge ahead, armed with the competence, experience, and the skills they learned by your side in your home. They have had opportunities to fail, to mess up and fix their errors, and won't be fazed by a misstep here and there as young adults. As an added bonus, the stories about the time the washing machine foamed over because your son used dish soap in place of laundry detergent, and the afternoon you all worked together to solve some funny in retrospect family emergency will be the tales you weave in and out of your holiday celebrations over a lifetime. Better to understand now that perfection is not what holds a family together. The bond forged through shared struggle is what endures over the long haul. Chapter 6. Friends, Accomplices to Failure and the Formation of Identity. The dad running back and forth between the play structure and the sandbox meant well, we could tell, but watching him work himself up into a sweaty lather was exhausting, even from a distance. My friend and I watched from our bench in the shade, quietly nibbling our children's cheddar crackers, diverted by his feats of extravagant overparenting. One of his children, a girl of about 6, was playing in the sandbox with my friend's daughter and 2 other girls. They were playing well together, but there was the usual jockeying for power going on between them, and they occasionally erupted in shouting as they fought over the coveted roles in their communal game. His other child, a toddler, was gleefully testing the limits of his strength and agility, repeatedly attempting to pursue a much older child up a slippery slide. Both of his children were having a grand time in the moments they were allowed to play on their own. The father, however, was nearly apoplectic with worry. He could not simultaneously supervise the details of both children's play, so he ran back and forth between the two, sometimes towing the toddler under his arm as the boy screamed in protest. Every time the girl's voice rose to a shout, or one of the other girls shouted at her, the father rushed in to sort out their issues, soothe or bribe the girl with the promise of a snack if she would just play nice. When one of the other girls spoke harshly to his daughter, his eyes swept the crowd, searching for backup in the form of the other girl's parents. My friend wisely kept her mouth shut and averted her eyes when he looked in her direction. Meanwhile, his toddler seized on the opportunity of his father's momentary inattention to run back to the slide, which made the father so nervous that he abandoned the management of his daughter and ran back across the playground for round 2. I can only imagine how tiring and stressful the play session was for that dad. As for the kids, I can't imagine they enjoyed all his meddling. They seemed to have fun in fits and starts, but as soon as they gathered momentum and the play took on a life of its own, it was shut down due to noise or conflict. What that overwrought father did not understand as he struggled to manage his kids' every move was that he was defeating the very purpose of their playtime. Our children's social lives begin in infancy when they gaze up at our faces and mirror our smiles, or convey the soggy discomfort of a wet diaper with a wailing cry. Once those babies move beyond the close company of their parents and venture into relationships with other children, however, they begin a lifelong education in rules of social conduct and the vocabulary of the subtle cues human beings use to communicate with each other. Fluency in the language of human social interaction will determine the success of all their future relationships, and failure to develop fluency is a significant handicap in life. Much of the foundation for this fluency is taught through free play with other children. In her book, The Nurture Assumption: Why Children Turn Out the Way They Do, psychologist Judith Harris argues that parents matter much less in the development of our children's nature than we'd like to believe, and that peers, not parents, shape much of our children's behavior and experience of the world. Peers teach our children how to interact and negotiate with other people, and this education starts in the sandbox, where children learn to play cooperatively, respond to the needs of others, and construct their own imaginary worlds. Play is a vital part of human development for many reasons. Board games teach logic and planning, making forts, spatial and construction skills. Basketball pickup games, teamwork. But the most important lessons of play and friend time are interpersonal, and these lessons are best learned when uninterrupted and free of adult manipulations and machinations. Adults should give kids the space and freedom to learn this language and work out the tough social moments for themselves, because those fights, tussles, silent treatments, and breakups are, despite the tears and heartbreak they cause, invaluable opportunities for growth. The social conflicts of childhood are all part of our education in human relationships, and failure to negotiate also provides its own lessons. Squabbles are opportunities to be valued, not emergencies to be managed. That father on the playground leapt in to intervene at the first sign of discord, and in doing so short-circuited each one of those potential lessons. Children used to play on their own, away from the eyes of parents, and were allowed to work out these social dynamics free of parental interference. No longer. When the troublesome sand-throwing girl from the playground is removed from the squabble, she never learns to deal with her own anger, let alone the anger of her intended target. Worse, she never witnesses the rage and upset she caused. She needs to appreciate fully that she has failed at a social interaction and sit with those confusing, bad feelings. The target of the sand attack, who does not appreciate having sand thrown in her face, will send a message about acceptable sandbox behavior. In the end, the conflict will pass, and those two girls will likely heal their rift, closer and wiser for the conflict. Sure, throwing sand is a failure to communicate effectively, but when adults intervene, the lessons laid out by peers don't get the chance to settle in and do their work on the child who has failed. Children develop empathy by seeing and hearing other people's reactions and emotions, and when we don't allow our children to experience the full brunt of those uncomfortable moments, we deny them a glimpse into the consequences and impact of their actions on others. One missed lesson in the sandbox is no big deal, of course, but when that child grows up under the wing of parents who continue to rescue, from playground dust-ups to tween misunderstandings and the inevitable volatility of adolescent friendships, that child becomes an adult with no clue about how to negotiate, placate, reason with, and stand up to other adults. Andrea Nair, a psychotherapist and parenting coach, explains further in an email. The cost of overprotecting is that the child does not develop the skills to fight back, speak up, or get the hell out of the way. If a child is taught by their parent that an adult will swoop in and fight for them or save them from any form of challenging situation, that child will keep expecting that to happen and not look for solutions to help herself. That child will also not learn valuable communication skills that are necessary during the heat of emotional flooding during an argument. If the emotional and social benefits of not swooping in to rescue kids from conflict are not sufficient to convince you, how about this? The ability to enjoy uninterrupted and unrestricted free play is also predictive of academic success. In her book, A Nation of Wimps, Hara Estroff Morano points out that social interactions cultivated during free play are so important that social behavior at recess in kindergarten predicts achievement at the end of first grade, as measured by class work and standardized tests of general knowledge, early reading, and math concepts. By a whopping 40%, peer play is significantly more predictive of academic success than standardized achievement tests. Free play and the social interactions that it fosters are undervalued in our children's social and emotional growth. It is a gross mistake to think that play is time unproductively spent. Sadly, many schools are so closely monitoring recess and managing children's social dynamics that kids don't have the opportunity or freedom to let recess and lunchtime dramas play out to their logical, and sometimes illogical, conclusions. This short-sighted and misguided move away from unsupervised free play means children have fewer opportunities to process the lessons they learn in school and are left with no outlet for the physical and emotional energy that builds up during the day. Later, when those recess-deprived children arrive home from school, they are no longer being kicked out of the house to fend for themselves until dinner. They are shuttled from organized activity to structured lessons and then asked to silence their urge for unstructured play and skirmishes with their siblings. A group of New Zealand schools heard researchers and sounded the call. As part of a study based at the Auckland University of Technology, 8 elementary schools agreed to eliminate recess rules, relax supervision, and stop intervening in students' playtime. Consequently, those schools saw a reduction in bullying, fewer rule infractions, reduced need for adult supervision, and an improvement in attention and behavior during class time. Grant Schofield, one of the investigators in the study, explains that backing off on adult supervision and interventions during free play allows kids to think for themselves and sort social interactions out. When we interfere with our kids' social lives, they are deprived of yet another opportunity to learn how to sort out feelings, convictions, and personal limits. The goals and lessons of children's social lives shift over time, but as they move from toddlerhood to adolescence, it's important to view friendships for what they are: opportunities for them to develop their own personalities, identities, and choices, and for us to gain perspective and feedback on who our children are becoming. The push and pull of playdates. In toddlerhood, friends are usually plucked from whichever kids are closest in age or proximity. Unfortunately, parents are increasingly opting for digital companions over living, breathing ones, but I beg you, put the tablets, game consoles, and televisions away and arrange playdates with a variety of real live children. Playdates don't just give you 5 minutes to breathe and enjoy your own social time with another parent. They give your child an opportunity to figure out what she likes and does not like in a companion. Give her that opportunity to learn about friendships by giving her space. Don't take charge of the playdate. Provide a safe environment and observe from afar. Unless injury is imminent, kids don't want or need you interfering in their play. Even pre-verbal children convey their wishes to playmates, and as they mature into their words, they will begin to voice their opinions, likes, and dislikes. Feel free to instruct those squabbling toddlers to use their words, but understand that they may not have the words to use. They are still developing the vocabulary they need in order to express their frustrations, and until they become more verbal, they may use their hands, teeth, and feet to express displeasure. Sibling rivalry and resolution. These rules of disengagement apply to sibling social dynamics as well, but it can be hard to remember when the screaming and squabbling become overwhelming. I've been known to intervene just to get the noise to stop, and don't really care what the argument is about by the time I've reached my breaking point. Siblings are our children's first friends, enemies, and teachers, and it's really important to let them work out their issues with each other on their own time and terms. I asked Julie Cole, writer, co-founder of Mabel's Labels, and mother of 6, how she handles the chaos and conflict. With 6 kids close in age, there's a lot of fun, a lot of love, and a lot of laughs. There's also a lot of bickering and getting into each other's business. In fact, I've been known to call them the Bickersons on occasion. I learned early on that I have better ways to spend my time than inserting myself into every disagreement. Short of putting them in a soundproof room, instead, I laid out the ground rules for how to fight fair early on, and as such, they seem to be able to resolve most things on their own. To me, fighting fair means only bickering about the issue at hand, never bringing up something from the past to use against a sibling, and no name-calling. This means that after an argument, they are back playing together 5 minutes later without ever remembering they had a disagreement. Fighting fair means I can step away and let them solve their own problems, which prevents me from pulling my hair out and being a full-time mediator. Playmate proximity to playground politics. Elementary school-age children tend to pick friends based on shared interests rather than proximity, and their play gets much more complex. As independence grows and dexterity improves, they invent games and construct elaborate adventures with complex rules for the imagined worlds they conquer. This type of play is an important learning process because it's the beginning of their move toward independence and autonomy. No wonder superheroes are their idols. Kids mimic the power, strength, and sense of justice those heroes represent in order to feel powerful in their own lives. They are used to obeying our rules, but as they step away from the parental sphere of influence, they discover the power of autonomy and self-regulation. They explore their own power to create and destroy entire realms and negotiate those power struggles with the other children involved in the game. As the influence of their friends begins to gain in power, it's a good time to begin to talk to your child about peer pressure and what she might do if she is placed in a situation that makes her uncomfortable. Think ahead to middle and high school and get her thinking about the moments she will have to rely on her internal moral compass and judgment in order to deal with peer pressure risky play. In talking with some moms about how they deal with their children's friendships, one mother confided that she's newly uncomfortable with her 3rd-grade daughter's ability to pick and choose friends that may or may not be a good influence, though she is also realizing how much her daughter is learning from these relationships. My daughter has a burgeoning friendship with a girl in her class who isn't a bad kid per se, but I'm troubled by what I hear about her. She lies, she's rather boy-crazy, and she is rude. But she also seems to have a pretty horrific home life, which makes me feel really awful for her. I don't want to completely discourage the friendship because I do feel like some kids can turn it around. Also, the friendship seems to be teaching my daughter compassion. She knows the child is quite poor, and she has been begging me to buy the little girl things since they became friends, things that my daughter used to take for granted, but now realizes her friend does not have. Kids are not born knowing how to negotiate for themselves and their friendships. They learn this skill through years of trying and failing to manage their lives and their relationships. When a child learns how to say no to an older kid who asks to play doctor behind the tool shed, he also creates the emotional groundwork for someday being confident enough to stand up to a bully or demand fair treatment from an adult. Parents need to step back and allow minor playground squabbles to play out because these conflicts give kids a chance to learn how to handle themselves in an increasingly powerful bully culture. We need to remember that if Johnny pushes another kid down on the pavement but is not allowed to receive feedback from his peers because teachers or overprotective parents whisk him or his victim away before resolution can occur, Johnny does not receive the benefit of peer feedback. In the absence of peer feedback, empathy can't develop, and he will become the sort of kid who can't understand how his actions impact his classmates and friends. all those adults who intervened in the necessary lessons of his playground days are to blame. Unfortunately, a few years later, when he looks around the middle school classroom and realizes no one wants to play with him, and his teacher must inform his parents that he has issues with his social skills, Johnny's social and emotional problems will be much harder to remedy. The good news is that given time and some space from adult intervention, kids learn these social skills on their own. If we allow them to mess up, anger other kids, fight, and make up, they will learn how to be a good friend, how to stand up for themselves, and how to say no to behaviors that make them uncomfortable. Research shows that children are less upset by their parents' arguments when they witness the emotional healing that results from making up. So it makes sense that kids benefit from seeing fights with friends through to resolution. Given that conflict is less upsetting to children than lack of closure, when you jump in to resolve a sandbox argument or forcefully arrange détente with the mean girl who has been ignoring your daughter, resolution is not being allowed to happen naturally in its own time and place. Unresolved conflict triggers anxiety for children and gets in the way of the healthy process of making up and healing rifts with friends, moments that cement long-term relationships that will endure through the next disagreement. Friendships in the middle years. As kids move to middle school, the focus shifts from shared interests to social acceptance. Cliques and other exclusionary social situations can be extremely stressful for middle school children, so it will be important to make sure that your child continues to participate in sports, music, and other extracurricular activities that bridge the divide between social groups. One mother from New Jersey admits that her own experiences with parents who allowed her autonomy in her social life inform her own autonomy-supportive parenting today. My parents left me to decide on my own friendships, and this was a great thing. I sometimes got my feelings hurt because I wouldn't do what my friends were doing, so they ousted me from their clique. It made me tougher and gave me pause when choosing friends. Rather than dictate whom your child can associate with, make your home a comfortable gathering place for your kid and his friends, and set the expectation that when your child is not in your house, he will let you know where he is. Understand that kids' social lives are constantly evolving, and do not attempt to intervene when you feel your child has been excluded. You can be sympathetic to your child's sadness, but don't try to fix a situation that is, and should be, out of your control. It can be painful to see your own child fail to make friends or smooth over disagreements, but these are important trials and lessons your child must experience and learn from. As a teacher, I have seen far too many kids arrive in middle school still unsure of how to handle social situations. But nothing upsets a child's social maturation more than parents who fight their children's battles for them and overreact to the normal social jostling that takes place in middle and high school. When parents overreact to everyday social interactions and label it bullying, children never learn how to figuratively push back and demand respect. Bullying is a real and terrifying fact of life in schools today. But in our attempts to halt bullying before it ramps up into dangerous territory, teachers and parents tend to overreact to the normal social and emotional ups and downs of the adolescent social scene and inadvertently saddle their kids with a victim mentality. In talking to educators and administrators, it is clear that they are aware and alarmed by the impact bullying can have on kids. But they are also frustrated by the way some parents feed the bullying dynamic while simultaneously trying to short-circuit it. At a recent speaking engagement, a high school teacher told me, "I recently taught a student who had been the target of a few of her classmates' ire because of a disagreement. And when the disagreements and behaviors rose to the level of bullying, the school bent over backwards to make sure this girl was protected and safe. However, the parents, and consequently the child, became so hyper-alert and oversensitive to what they saw as bullying that the teachers were forced to become secret agents. The entire class orbited around that one child's needs, from classroom seating charts to teacher supervision during the walk between classes. The mother sent daily emails to the teachers and administrators, quoting her daughter's reports of mean looks, whispers, and perceived slights. Normal social interaction could not take place in that class, and consequently, social dynamics were a disaster. The class ceased to be a community, and even academic progress took a hit that year. Worse, that girl came to view all uncomfortable social interaction as bullying. I am so sad for this child. Her parents mean well, but by moderating and weighing in on the subtle nuance of every social encounter, they have destroyed their daughter's confidence and convinced her that she is a helpless victim. As adults, we all have our own bullies to deal with: mean bosses, vicious enemies, and jealous peers. How your kid learns to deal with those people in their childhood, when failure means a day or two of hurt feelings or social exclusion, can mean the difference between a thin skin and a strong sense of self. As children get older and friends play a greater role in their development of identity, it can be tempting to step in when you sense the presence of a bad influence. But before you criticize your child's friends, know this: making, keeping, and deciding when and how to part with friends is part of your child's education. Something about that most dubious of friends attracts your child, and she is simply trying to figure out what that attraction is all about. Maybe that girl who dresses all in black and paints her nails green and swears more often than you are comfortable with has talents or social skills your child is trying to learn. Maybe your child is simply feeling out the limits of what she's comfortable with in her own world. No matter how nervous these strange and different friends make you feel, it's vital that you stay out of your child's social choices, particularly in adolescence. It may seem like a simple matter of a bad friendship to you, but your child is practicing empathy and learning how to get along with people who may not share the same background and goals. These are incredibly important social skills. As adolescents move into college, they will adjust more easily to wider, more diverse, and often challenging social situations. In the business world, the ability to read all kinds of people is a sought-after character trait, particularly in women. These people, called chameleons or high self-monitors, are better at adapting themselves to new people and to new work environments, and better at bringing other people around to their way of thinking. In sales, chameleons are able to connect to people through subtle cues of mimicry and outperform other salespeople. In business, those who are skilled at mimicry and can adapt their behavior to diverse groups of people make the best negotiators. So when your son comes home from school with a new group of kids who make you uncomfortable because they are simply different from anyone you have seen your child socialize with before, think of those earrings, tattoos, varying skin colors, dyed hair, and accents you can hardly understand as an education worthy of a seminar at the Harvard Business School. If your child plays with carbon copies of the same 4 kids every day for the rest of his life, he will never develop empathy for difference or an understanding of how to negotiate and reason with people who come from differing perspectives, worldviews, and ethnicities. Consider your polite smile and lack of judgment as an investment in your child's education, and back off. Let him figure out for himself what he likes and does not like in people. Learning from adolescent social angst. By the time these children become teenagers, you will be glad you stayed out of their social lives, because your child will have superior skills of negotiation and self-awareness. As tweens become teens and perceived dangers can become real dangers, parents begin to wonder when it's time to intervene. Depending on whom you ask, this question will get many different answers, from 5 minutes ago to never. I'm always going to err on the side of trusting my child in order to preserve autonomy. But out of curiosity, I asked a group of 15-year-olds to answer this question. Most of the kids felt it was perfectly reasonable for a parent to snoop if that parent had a reason to snoop. If someone told you that your kid was doing something dangerous, clarified one boy. In talking to these kids, I was struck by the fact that none of them said that it was never okay to snoop. One explained, "It depends on the kid. And unless parents are being paranoid or overly protective, I think they know if they can trust their kid or not. If the kid is basically a good kid, let them figure out who they can be friends with. And even if they start acting like the bad kids, sometimes they need to do a couple of stupid things before they realize they don't want to go down that road. Give them some space." There was dissent among these teenagers about how far to let kids travel down the road into dangerous behaviors. But they all agreed on one of the biggest risks parents face when they attempt to control teenagers' social lives: trust. My friends with strict parents lie so much more than the kids whose parents let them have some freedom. Yeah, this one friend of mine, her parents think she's perfect and doing everything they tell her to do, but she's lying to them about everything, even stuff she doesn't have to lie about. There were nods all around. Adolescent psychologist Jennifer Hartstein stressed the importance of finding a way to support but not control teens through their adolescent relationships in an email. Adolescence is a time when friendships are the toughest in many ways. Teens are learning who they are, what they want, and how to balance that with friends experiencing the same things. It is so valuable to encourage adolescents to be interpersonally effective on their own, as they will soon be leaving home and need to do so in many aspects of their lives. For parents, this is a huge challenge, as seeing their teen in pain or struggling is terrifying. Be a guide and a safe place for problem solving, rather than the problem solver. Your teen will gain strength from knowing that he or she faced a problem with a peer directly and handled it, learning what works and what doesn't along the way, and thus being more prepared for all the challenges adulthood presents. Yes, kids will make bad choices in friends, and some friendships will fail, but these missteps are what we look back on in order to recognize the traits of a healthy relationship versus a toxic one. As hard as it is to live up to Hartstein's challenge, the rewards, independent, courageous, and brave young adults who understand what they want and need from the friends they will make and rely on over a lifetime, are worth the restraint and patience. I recognize, however, that the stakes are higher once kids hit adolescence. A failed relationship or social interaction as a third grader is a much less traumatic and emotional gauntlet than a hormone-fueled adolescent feud or the frightening weight for parents of dangers such as drugs, alcohol, drunk driving, and eating disorders. That said, here are some tools for meeting Hartstein's challenge while protecting your child's safety and emotional health. If your child changes in ways that make you uncomfortable as a result of his friendships, talk to him about what he likes or is drawn to in these new friends. What do you like about Mike? What do you two do together? You seem to be spending a lot of time around Mike. What is it that you find interesting in him?
This is the end of the disc. The audiobook continues on the next disc.